Hey everyone, and welcome to Gaming in the Keats. I am your host Shite, and I'm bringing you my first Universal Battle report. This is a battle between, once again, my friend Vamps and Marilyn, and we're getting in a practice game. Both of us are practicing for our respective tournaments and leagues that are coming up. So I'm really excited because I'm going to be using Demon Legions in the Berlin Liga. So yeah, let's dive right in. So, apologies everyone, I'm also a bit sick, but I want to get this to you regardless. Keep in mind these lists came out right before the updates that have just come out this week, first week of March, last week of February. So yeah, let's go into this list here. So we have a Courtesan of Cerberus on Divination. She's rocking her Kaleidoscopic Flesh and the extra attack with Hammer Hand and Darkhide as well, so I can scout her in my deployment zone, as well as some Chitin Scales to help against, say, Fate's Judgment or Strength 3 AP0 shooting. That's just en masse. We also have my general, the Kaluma's Deceiver. I'm gonna call him Seba because the model I actually do have is named after a friend of mine who gave me the model as a gift for my birthday. So Kaluma's Deceiver, Seba, you are the deceiver, and you're going to be deceiving some vampires today with some guiding venom sacs. So that means the unit that he's in gets poison. Trying out Greenfire Eyes, the reroll ones for charges. I don't think I like it, but I'm going to see if it comes up, and I'll probably remove it by the end of it, but who knows, it might be useful. And then we have Piercing Spike for some AP3. We have basically the same build with a Harbinger of the Chaos and Adaptive Evo to get me that Spectral Blades, most importantly Spectral Blades, and then I also like having Whispers of the Veil as well on him. So, and actually, excuse me, she's going to be Lilith because she is a gift from the girlfriend of Seba. So, yeah, I've received 2 nice birthday gifts right before I start playing here in Berlin. This is going to be Seba and Lilith here. They go in 2 big units of Succubi, one with the Bronze Backbone, so Seba will go in the Bronze Backbone Succubi with that rerolls to hit to help synergize with the poison, and then right now we're doing 22 Succubi with Divining Snout. I only did Divining Snout at this point just to get me really close to core. That put me at 1126. Again, I don't think I like Divining Snout. I don't think I want the Harbinger in combat immediately, but hey, we're trying some things out here. I'm pretty new to Demon Legion, so why not? Next we have 6 Clawed Fiends with Piercing Spikes, some more AP, Veil Serpents to help me deal with shooting or agility debuffs, or also Smite the Unbeliever pairs really nicely with Whispers of the Veil for some redundancy on -1 resilience. I like it. Then we have some Bloat Flies, Unhinging Jaw, and then to round it out we have 2 units of Chaff. So that is my list I'm taking. So for my opponent's list, he's bringing yet again, not again I should say, this is his Zombie Dragon build of the day. It is a Nosferatu Vampire to help with the Gates of the Netherworld shenanigans, the Mesmerizing Gaze, so he can just challenge out your characters and then kill them, and then eventually grind the unit down, and Occultism with the Halberd of Cleansing Light. And then we have a Courtier with Bestial Bulk. So this vampire is going into the Ghasts that you'll see in a minute with a 2-up, 5-up save and Unbreakable Will, so it makes that Ghast unit stubborn. Also has a shield, just to be a bit more defensive and give it parry. Then we have a Necromancer. That's interesting. I know. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So we have 2 Necromancers. One of Alchemy with the Magical Heirloom, and then we have another Necromancer right here, just an apprentice with the Crown of Autocracy for some March shenanigans. Then we have the core with ghouls, skeletons with Relentless, zombies, 2 times direwolves, 8 ghasts, ugh, gross. And then we have a cadaver wagon to give those ghasts a nice 4-up fortitude. So that's, yeah, that unit is particularly difficult to shift. So the cadaver wagon will go into the the zombies, and then it'll just chill behind the ghasts, giving the ghasts and the ghouls some fortitude goodness. And then, of course, you can't leave home without a shrieking horror and a cheeky Varkalak. So, deployment and secondary, we have marching columns here, and then we have hold the ground. So both of us are going to be fighting over the center of the board for that secondary objective. So on spell selections, I have 7 spells, and both of us are going to be channeling 5 due to the demon's special rule. The courtesan, I chose Know Thy Enemy and Stars Align on divination. The deceiver, I chose Hand of Heaven. Harbinger, I chose Whispers of the Veil and Spectral Blaze. And serpents, I chose Smite the Unbeliever and Twisted Effigy to try and stop that shrieking horde from shooting. And my opponent had times 4 arises, so 4 different arises. Each character had an arise. The Alchemist Necro also had Word of Iron and Silver Spike to try and snipe my courtesan. The Courtier had Whispers of the Veil and Arise, and then the Dragon of Occultism had Breath of Corruption and Rot Within, as well as the Arise. I'm not going to lie, I'm not happy about my spell selection. I think I was just so focused on my list being a combat-oriented list, like very close combat oriented, that I wanted to just stack on as many buffs or debuffs as I could. And in hindsight, I'm thinking I really wanted at least 1 more damage spell, and probably could have diversified onto where those damage spells go, because I can always take Spear of Infinity if I want to, or the court can take Fate's Judgment, the serpents can take Hand of Heaven, and I can take a Spear of Infinity somewhere. So, and then the Harbinger can also take us, the sniping one in Evocation, Hasten the Hour, I believe it's called, yeah. So, anyway, but that's what I'd chosen for this battle today. So you see the top of turn 1, actually right before right before I move. So it was marching columns. I dropped my fiends first. So my opponent wanted to choose sides and chose this side here with the hill. So I dropped the fiends. He dropped dogs. I dropped furies. He dropped his ghouls, and then I dropped the succubi unit. He dropped his zombies with the cadaver wagon, and then from there I chose to drop for first. I think with hold the ground, perhaps it's better to go second, just to try and steal that objective, or like having that last turn to grab the objective, I think is pretty critical. However, at this rate, I just kind of wanted to push forward and not really be blocked up with chaff, and let my opponent take board space, especially with that hill kind of controlling the center. So yeah, I just decided to go first at this rate. And so you can see here my opponent put the dogs on either side to prevent my courtesan from trying to come around the flanks. And this is after their vanguards, because once he saw that the courtesan was deployed here, because I didn't want to deal with dogs just challenging out my courtesan and locking her up for at least a turn due to the combat, due to crumble and everything, and being challenged out. It'll at least take me 2 rounds of combat to get through them, and then I have to heal, and then my opponent can of course heal back the champion. So I just chose to put my courtesan in the center, and then his Varkalak is coming up here. So yeah, we have Fiends, Furies, Succubi, Furies, Veil Serpents. We have the Kaluma's Deceiver here. We have the Succubi here. We have the Harbinger here. courtesan, and bloat flies. On my opponent's side, we have dogs, ghouls, the zombies with the wagon, the ghasts with the vampire, the big shrieking horror right here. We have a zombie dragon zoning the center, and then we have the skeletons with the relentless banner and the apprentice right in there, and then this final unit of dogs. All right, so my turn 1. I move up, I'd say rather tentatively. Everything is basically outside of charge range. And I move the courtesan in a way where the Varkalak can't actually march 16 and get out of her line of sight. I put it so that if the dogs want to charge the flies, they'll maximize with 2 models. I'm not sure if this move was good. I was a bit concerned about it. But in my magic phase, I did end up getting stars align on this unit just to ensure that I'm going to do enough wounds if he chooses to lock up my bloat flies to hopefully crumble the unit. And then I also got a Smite the Unbeliever off on the Varkalak with -1 strength, I believe, and my opponent saved dice to dispel Hand of Heaven. So right now I'm just taking board position all around here, creating a nice little, oh gosh, I want to say concave. That might not be right. So yeah, I'm at the moment, I don't feel like I need to push up into the center just yet, because this dragon can easily just charge once I get in and just start killing my characters, and I don't feel like dealing with that right now. So, on to my opponent's turn 1. He moves his dog to chaff my movement here, and I don't really have good overruns here. In fact, I think I'm outside of 12 here if the fiends wanted to come in and hit the flank. If I wanted to do that. My opponent decides to move the Varkalak back and is just outside of charge range of the courtesan. And what he did here, this surprised me, and I didn't realize I had done this, but the dogs actually could have charged past the bloat flies and hit my courtesan. And it would have been really close, but what probably would have happened was they would have touched here, and then I would have had to close, or we would have had a closing door situation because the dogs would be in the way of the footprint, perhaps. And so the courtesan would then close to them. And he needed a 10. Luckily, he failed it. I didn't quite see that, and I could have prevented that by simply angling the courtesan more facing down, facing the center. So that was a bit of a mistake on my part, but I got a bit lucky there. So I'm happy about that. In the magic phase, my opponent got Whispers of the Veil on this succubi unit here. I believe he failed the Breath of Corruption, thank goodness, and I saved all my dice to stop the silver spike from the necro into my courtesan. So, what I do to respond here is I charge the dogs with the succubi, and I reposition my courtesan so the Varkalak can't come around and threaten the flank of my other succubi unit. I'm trying to stay away from the Shrieking Horror because the Shrieking Horror is just like a direct answer to the courtesan. And even though I do have Twisted Effigy, right now I would prefer to be focusing on putting my spells elsewhere here. So I'm just keeping the courtesan, protecting my succubi unit here. However, I do bring the bloat flies up to this side to see if I can pull that shrieking over here, and also trying to see if I can get around and get to this necro bunker. That would be great. The flies are just outside of line of sight of the dogs, so the dogs can't charge past, and then which would then enable the Shrieking Horror to charge into the flies. So the Shrieking Horror can't charge them, and now the flies are in in a position to start being a nuisance, which I'm happy about. Another thing here is that the fiends have given the ghouls a flank. And this is a 9 to get this, no reroll. And what will happen is when the ghouls make contact, my opponent will only be able to get one ghoul into contact. And so my goal here is to bait this charge. And so if he makes it, I'm actually pretty happy with that, because I think ultimately he'll just have a charge flank, big flank. He may do a wound, but I feel like I will have enough to be able to stick and hold and reform and just keep them in that awkward position where they can't get all of their attacks and until he decides to go into bus formation. And I think then I will probably try and shift all my fiends over into base contact. So that's my thinking there. In Magic, I got Smite the Unbeliever again and Whispers on the Ghasts. So now they're both -1 or -2 resilience at this point. And I also got Stars Align on this Succubi unit here with the Harbinger, just in case, just in case he wanted to try a longer charge. I believe this from the Ghasts into the Succubi was a 9, and my opponent decides to dispel Spectral Blades on this unit here. So I'm feeling pretty confident at this point. I also have the attribute of Divination onto this unit, because I'm sure if my opponent is charging, he's probably going to focus on this unit. But we'll see what my opponent decides to do here. So, yes. This is the reform. I make sure everything is in my front arc. However, I feel like I still could have done this just in a way to pivot this Succubi unit a bit more so that the fiends could charge past without having to wheel. So I think I could have done that a bit better. But that's showing an overview once the dogs have been dealt with. So you see now, my opponent makes it on a 10 into the fiends. So he did choose to charge it. And he told me after the fact that had he known he made it, he was going to make it, he actually would have charged the Ghasts into this unit. But instead what he decides to do is bring the Ghasts to chaff my Succubi unit because they're so wide from coming to the flank of the ghouls. Furthermore, he does a similar thing where he moves his Necromancer. This is the Alchemy Necromancer, excuse me. This is the Alchemy Necromancer, and this is the Apprentice here. He moves the Alchemy Necromancer out of his skeleton unit, pops the Relentless, and comes up and chaffs my other Succubi unit. So I'm kind of like, damn it. And it was just enough with that 15 inches. Damn it. So that was a good play by my opponent. The Varkalax coming here to threaten the flank a bit of my Succubi, and now his Shrieking Horror was able to move over and away and scream at my Bloatflies. My opponent is able into Magic Phase to get Whispers and Rot on the Court. He fails Breath of Corruption with a double 1. So I think that's what got the Rot Within off. So he failed the Breath of Corruption on double 1, and then he decided to use Rot Within on the Courtesan, and I saved my dice to once again dispel the Silver Spike from the Necromancer. So that's how it's looking there. This is a close-up of after the combat. I kill 2 ghouls. I win combat, I think by 1, because he did do 1 wound onto me. I'm counting up. And then I just simply reform, so we're in the front, and he reforms to go into bus formation. So yeah, I start some charging. I charge the Succubi into the skeletons. I charge the other unit of Succubi with Seba in there into the Ghasts. And then I chaff here with my Furies. I chaff the Varkalak as well with my other unit of Furies. I bring my Courtesan around because ultimately I decided I didn't want to charge the Courtesan with these 2 debuffs up on the Varklak because I really wasn't certain that the Courtesan was going to kill it, especially with a 4 Fortitude. Yeah, I was not confident about that trade. Plus, that brings the Courtesan super close to the Shrieking Horror to be screamed at anyway, so nah, I ain't having that. So Courtesan comes over and tries to support the center. The Veil Serpents come over here to do essentially the same thing, just they do have line of sight onto this ghoul unit in case I want to charge, but I think that's a front, so I probably wouldn't want to do that if it was a front, if I really felt like it was necessary. So I'm just keeping the Serpents back to cast some other spells. I do want to get rid of the chaff here with the Bloatflies because I just don't feel like having yet another piece of chaff come up and block me again. I mean, I already have the Varklak that I haven't really dealt with yet. So I'm just getting rid of the dogs here, hopefully, and then my goal is to run off the board and away from that Shrieking Horror. And now his Shrieking Horror is also outside of the March bubble of his dragon, so my opponent then has to make a decision on whether or not to charge the dragon or to bring the dragon into the March bubble of the Shrieking Horror to allow the Shrieking Horror to come around. So that is a decision my opponent then has to make. In the magic phase, I do get off once again a Whispers and a Smite the Unbeliever again on the Ghasts, which I'm very happy about. And my opponent saves all of his dice once again to stop Spectral Blades. So this is after combat here. So Seba got into a challenge with the vampire and just outright killed it. Oh my goodness, I'm not gonna lie, I'm loving the Kaluma's Deceiver. It is such a cool unit. The rules are really neat, and it has been able to just snipe all of these other characters that are roughly the same point cost, or just do incredible amounts of damage to really help the Succubi go over the edge in terms of their damage output. So the Kaluma had, in this instance, 4 attacks from the vampire, 3 attacks from the Ghast here, and then +1, so 8 attacks from the Kaluma. If those of you who aren't familiar with demons and the Kaluma's Deceiver, essentially the Know Thyself rule states that the Kaluma can pick any model part that's in base contact with and choose its attack. Choose that model part's attack characteristic to add it to its own attack characteristic of 1. So in this case, I got 8 attacks from the Kaluma alone, and I'm having a 5-up poison, which is really nice. AP 3, strength 5. So I'm liking it. However, the Ghast unit itself made quite a fair amount of regen or fortitude saves from the Succubi. And, I'm hitting on 3s, wounding on 4s, and yeah, I killed 2 models, plus the vampire, but I think this is also after Crumble, so, also there's the Necromantic Aura that keeps the gas unit from crumbling, so yeah, that was a bit frustrating to deal with. I thought I was going to do a bit more with these 2 debuffs off, but that's where we stand now. And the Succubi reform to face the dragon that may come in. And then I choose to do this. I choose to reform here with the Fiends. I win combat. I only take 1 more wound, and I slide over my Fiends here, and now I'm feeling fairly confident that I can outgrind this unit. That is my thinking, at least. But we'll see what happens. The Bloatflies run off the board, like I said. They didn't need much. I think like a 6. And so I'm a bit concerned about this now, because now his dragon has choices. His dragon can see this unit, and he can even fly to this side if he wanted to avoid a countercharge from the Courtesan. And both of our champions are still here, which is very important, especially for vampires. And my champion here, you'll notice, died. So I think my opponent has a pretty interesting choice coming up on what to do with his zombie dragon. So as you can see now, his zombie dragon made the choice to charge the Harbinger's unit because this allows him to snipe the Harbinger and get rid of Whispers and Spectral Blades. And I have to accept the challenge because of Mesmerizing Gaze. The Shrieking Horror just comes over to, as far as he can. Varkalak takes the chaff. Zombies take the chaff. And my opponent in his magic phase, this was a big magic phase because I had to make a crucial decision on which heals to dispel. So my opponent gets a heal off on the ghouls. I let that go. Then my opponent goes for the 6-inch heal, which hits the ghouls and the ghasts. And so my thinking was, well, I'm waiting for the 12-inch heal, which will hit. I'm waiting for the 12-inch heal. And I think this was this round where I had to have this debate. Or perhaps I stopped one of them. But essentially, I dispelled Silver Spike, and my opponent was able to get, unfortunately, I think my opponent got off 2 heals this round. 2 small heals, if I can remember correctly. So I think I made a bit of a mistake choosing the dispelling here on which spells to dispel. I need to have at least stopped 1 heal. So yeah, this is now my turn 3. So I'm charging the Courtesan into the flank of the ghasts. I debated about charging to the dragon, but honestly, I think the dragon is kitted out to deal with the Courtesan. And I'd rather just try and get rid of this unit and free up my Succubi unit. As you'll notice, I've been so far winning the objective at the moment. So this is my first time that I will win the objective at the end of my opponent's round. So I'll get 1 crown. And I decide to charge my Veil Serpents into the dragon to feed him a champion. He can't stomp, and I think I might actually win and crumble him a little bit. So that's my hope, at least, and just stick him there, because all I need to do is free up these units and get them into that dragon. I think I can pop it. I do a number on the ghouls here, as you can see, and the fiends take more damage. My opponent reforms like so to eat after he eats the chaffle, and I put a cheeky wound on his necromancer. Also, you'll see when he did the rot within, now he's gotten 2 rots within on my Courtesan. He sacrificed to boost the weapon skill of the dragon, and now he's taken 2 wounds on the other necromancer. And then as the bloatflies come back on, I try and do this movement in a way to make sure that the Shrieking Horror can't move out of my line of sight. But I could have done this better to give myself a charge, because the Shrieking Horror is outside of the March bubble, and I just didn't plan that one very well. So that was a missed opportunity. However, you can see in my magic phase, I got off a Twisted Effigy here from the Serpents, and I also got off a bubble, Stars Align. So my opponent held his dice to stop Smite the Unbeliever here. And after combat, oh boy. So yes, I was correct in this, that my opponent actually lost combat and crumbled because he did only 3 wounds exactly to this Veil Serpent champion. I got a bit lucky with my Aegis saves, even with the divine attacks. And I'm getting there. I'm getting the ghasts down, but they're making their regen saves, and they're eating my Succubi. And the Courtesan didn't kill the ghast champion. I'm like, damn it. Oh, crap. So that's frustrating. And now the ghouls start waking up, and we're doing a lot to each other, but I feel like I have this grind at the moment, but the heals keep bringing these models back. And like, I'm starting to get concerned if the fiends. I'm starting to get concerned on whether or not the fiends can actually grind down the ghouls, because I can't seem to be stopping, or not stopping, every heal. And he has 4 arises in the list, so that's where we stand. I also reformed the succubi in a way to face the Varkalak here. And I'm hoping with Stars Align Bubble Up, I can just get some wounds on this Varkalak if he decides to come in. And hopefully just keep these units here for one more turn so I can win this objective. Because right now my opponent only has one. Well, this unit is no longer scoring because the vampire's not in the ghast unit. So my opponent doesn't have any scoring units by the objective. So this is what it looks like. Just an overview before my opponent's turn 3 charges here. And after charges and movement, my opponent charges the Varkalak into the succubi. I have to take the flank here from the zombie unit. That's going to be a lot of static res. I'm not looking forward to that. Now his ghouls and his gas are still, of course, within that silly fortitude bubble. Something to keep in mind is that with Gates of the Netherworld, my opponent is able to heal wounds very, very efficiently onto his dragon and onto these units. So it's just very, very tough to deal with. And my opponent is able to just sneak outside of my line of sight here. Oh man, I was kicking myself for that one. Even though he had Twisted Effigy, that was the moment where I really could have just pinned in that Shrieking Horror. And the Bloatflies with Unhinging Jaw, I think, can handle it. So I was kicking myself for that one. So yeah, that's my opponent. So I think this was the decision. Here was the 6-inch decision where he gets the first heal off on the ghouls. Then he does the 6-inch heal. And I let the 6-inch heal go, thinking that he's going to try a 12-inch heal from this Necro. But he doesn't. So I believe I dispelled a Breath of Corruption with my last dice, but we had a discussion about this on how to stop the vampire healing phase. Or, yeah, that's what I'm calling it, the healing phase, essentially. And so because the 12-inch bubble is so much harder to cast, my opponent only had 3 dice left, it just would have made sense to try and stop the 6-inch bubble, because then it just focuses. My opponent then chooses to do one more targeted heal instead of a bubble heal. So, yeah, that was a mistake I made in choosing which heal to try and stop. And you'll see what happens afterwards. So, this gas unit is still there. Is still freaking there. And yeah, I lose some succubi here. So that's what it looks like. Oh, and yeah, I lose some succubi here. We're still stuck. And this is after combat. I lose, of course. I'm steadfast. However, here I just decided to show a picture of this. My opponent and I had a laugh about this. This was my roll to wound with the succubi, 6666. And then underneath, my opponent rolls the 6666 for his fortitude saves. I was like, come on. Damn it. Damn you, Varkalak. So it's not like he rolled like a 4, 4, 5, 6. It was like all 6s. We both just had a laugh about that. That happens sometimes. And yeah, take a look at this. All of a sudden, the ghouls are kicking my fiend's butt. Ah. And so now I'm probably going to lose this unit. Like, crap. This did not go to plan at all. So this is, right now we're at top of 4. My turn. The only thing I really have to do is just move the bloat flies at this rate. I get Know Thy Enemy off on the court, but then my opponent decides to stop the bubble Stars Align. And this is after the Succubi combat, and he decides to reform like so. He did take a wound from the Succubi, which I'm, yay, happy about. Oof. And now things just start really falling apart. So, at this rate, my opponent cleared out the fiends here. So this is, I think, bottom of 5 here. Yeah, this is bottom of 5. He moves the Shrieking Horror over. As you can see, he cleared out my Veil Serpents. He cleared out my Succubi. And now, this was an 8 charge into the rear of the Courtesan with the ghouls. Once he cleared out the fiends. And he makes it. Crap. No. So we have all this extra static combat res. Oh, man. And, yeah. I mean, Know Thy Enemy brought my Courtesan back up to her regular offense and defensive skill, but I'm not sure that's going to save me at this rate. We have 1 Succubi left, and we have my Kaluma just holding things up. And the Shrieking Horror, of course, comes over here to scream at some more bloat flies. And yeah, so here's this combat. This frickin' wagon made a lot of fortitude saves. I think my Kaluma had 8, 9, 10 attacks now, with the zombie attack, personal attack, and then 8 model parts, or the model part with 8 attacks here. So I know at some point I get in a challenge with this Necromancer and I kill the Necromancer, and then I put the attacks onto the wagon, or one of the reverse happened, and I think my opponent decided to not challenge with the Necromancer the first round, so I put all the attacks in. I think this wagon only has 1 health point left because my opponent made some awesome regen saves. So, and you'll see here this is how many zombies he has growing back as well. He got some raises off. And yeah, this is before combat, Know Thy Enemy, and boop, after combat, Courtesan pops. So that didn't go well. Yeah, I didn't do any wounds to the dragon. He healed himself, and the Courtesan just popped from combat res. He did 3 wounds to the Courtesan, so, ugh. And here's a picture of simply the Shrieking Horror finishes off the bloat flies, as well as I think my bloat flies actually failed a march check, and I was trying to get away from them at that point, and once they failed, they were just stuck and ate it. I wasn't making my fortitude saves there either. And finally, the Kaluma, I get past his fortitude save, and at this rate, Kaluma is the only model left on my side on the board, and you'll notice now my opponent has had 2 turns to tie the objective with these damn ghouls. Oh, man. So, Seba, you stayed alive. Good job, bud. But yeah, that turned south rather quickly. And now it is a victory to the Vampire Covenant. A great game by my opponent, very well played, and wow, those magic phases are so tough to deal with from Vampire Covenant. And it ended up being a 15-5 with a tied objective. So I lost my Courtesan, the Harbinger, both my Succubi, the Furies, the Serpents, the Fiends, the Flies, and from my opponent's side, he lost his Bestial Volk Vamp, the Necro Apprentice, both his Chaff and the Skeletons, as well as the Ghasts and the Wagon. So, oh my goodness. What a game. That one was a tough one. But we'll get to some concluding thoughts in a moment. So that being said, concluding thoughts about the match. To start, I was not happy with my spell selection here. It could have been I just could have diversified my spells a bit more instead of have them solely be close combat oriented. I think the reform with the Fiends really opened up the game in that it allowed the ghouls to finish them off and outgrind them with all those heals. And we have to remember, ghouls and ghasts have the unholy appetite. So if they do a wound the first round of combat, they get hatred for their second round, and that combos with their poison. Or they get, I shouldn't say hatred, they just get rerolls to hit. So that's how they outground the Fiends. And had I kept my one Fiend in contact and that was it, and kept them in the front, I think that both those units would have been stuck there for the rest of the game. And at that rate, that would have kept the ghouls from charging into the rear of my Courtesan and at least allow me to win the objective. So that was massive. I also think I could have just been better with how I positioned my bloatflies when I was reforming them or moving them around to prevent the Shrieking Horror from flying out of my line of sight. This was really just a learning experience. Yet again, another learning experience from how to process dispelling the Vampire Covenant magic phase, because you have on one side you have 4 rises, and then on the other side you have different utility spells that are either close combat or range damage spells that you still are important to dispel too. So it's just really trying to prioritize what spells that need to be stopped and what heals specifically need to be stopped. So for me it was that 6-inch bubble heal. And then I'm thinking overall with this list, I really was missing something with flaming, or something that I could rely on that could get past fortitude, because this list struggled with fortitude. I was so reliant on spectral blades, and that was the one spell that my opponent needed to stop. And when you're rolling, when you have just such a high wound count unit with a 4-up fortitude save, and you can regrow that unit, it's just very difficult to shift in referring to the ghasts. So anyway, everyone, I really appreciate you just listening and taking the time to watch this video. And I'm excited. I want to take something similar perhaps into the Berlin Liga, so I wanted to get this practice game in. But who knows, I may end up changing everything completely. I'm not sure yet, but the time is ticking away to submit a list. But that being said, everyone, thank you for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.